Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're thrilled to have you with us for the launch of the Gen Z Economy Report, Cash, Culture, and Clout, brought to you by Student Village in partnership with futurist and trend analyst Bronwyn Williams of Flux Trends. I'm Lebo Lechela, and I'll be your MC for today's session. Over the next 90 minutes, we'll be unpacking what young South Africans really want, how they spend their money, and what this means for your brand, your strategy, and the future of business. Before we jump in, this is a Zoom webinar, so we encourage you to use the Q&A box or chat box to share questions or comments throughout. We'll be running a few live polls to get your take, so keep an eye out for those. And yes, you will be able to request the full report and recording afterwards. We'll share details at the end. Sound good? Awesome. Let's get into it. First up, we've got two brilliant voices to set the tone for today. Ronen is young elder and CEO of Student Village, a youth economy expert who spent over 2 decades building bridges between brands and South African youth. And Bronwyn Williams, futurist and business trends analyst at Flux Trends, known for her sharp takes and ability to translate insight into action. Together, they're going to unpack the data, the story, and the strategy behind this report. Ronen, please take it away.
Thanks, Lebs. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Morning, Brian. We're going to get straight down to business. We don't have time to mess around. We're going to keep our answers short, and we want to deliver a nutrient-rich set of commentary on what is excellent data. So we handed you 930 responses. This is not our first report that we've done together. They're ages between 18 and 30, representative of the demographics of South Africa. What surprised you on this report?
Yeah, as you say, this is not a small report. This is a chunky study, statistically relevant, and brands and businesses really should be paying attention to it. There are a few surprises in here that challenge stereotypes of what people have about Gen Z. I think the first one that's definitely worth picking up on is the savings culture within this demographic and how that compares and contrasts to other demographic groups in South Africa. Gen Z is actually saving. So this perception that young people are not responsible with their money needs to be challenged, especially when you contrast that with older people over 30, and how in South Africa we are negative savers. In other words, we're living off debts and credit way above our means. Gen Z is making a different sort of plan.
So not only are they not broke, they're saving and they're making a plan. Where are they getting their money from?
That is the great question. So we have a few clues, but there's still a little bit more that we can dig into and do some follow-up research there too. But I want to come back to that point of how much they're saving. Like we picked up that they're saving up to like a third of their income or something like, 3,000 Rand a month. That's a large chunky sum. 40-year-olds aren't saving that at the moment. I've spoken to many 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds who are saying, that is an awful lot of money. So we do need to sort of frame that this is a large amount of saving, both in terms of absolute and relative terms, which is why the question you ask as to where that's coming from is so important. Where it is not coming from is from a traditional JOB. Instead, there are other streams of income that are making up, as I think you've termed it, like this Ubuntu economy, where a lot of the income here is actually coming from not just multiple sources of revenue, we can get into side hustles and jobs in a second, but also from multiple different people within these individuals' lives. So saving and making money are becoming a community effort. It's a new form of capitalism where income is shared among partners, among lovers, among friends, and among families.
Absolutely. And what we saw is one of the biggest reasons they were saving money. So I think it was actually 1,800 Rand a month of their disposable, which was around 3 or 3,500. And they were saving for emergencies. Now, this is a big thing, and this speaks largely of what's happening today in our economy. Every other week, there's an emergency or a rainy day. So students used to be beneficiaries. So they used to just receive money and have all of their money as disposable. But now what we're seeing is in this Ubuntu economy is that they're also responsible for whatever happens at home. So not only do they have to just look after themselves, but if home calls, they need the cash to be able to provide the family that's in need.
Yes.
Also is if there's no emergency, then generally what we're seeing is a saving for the next big ticket item. So let's get into how they're actually getting their money. So it changes from state reliance. So we had just under 20% that are receiving grants from NSFAS. Then we're getting from parents, lovers, mothers, and that crew. And then there's side hustles. And side hustles came through at just over 21%, which is the largest pool of where they're getting their money from. So they really are making a plan. What were the wild kind of hustles that surprised you?
Well, there's all sorts of things there, but there's things that even aren't even seen as a side hustle that are a side hustle. If you're getting the income in, that counts, right? Like as long as you're getting the money, that's there. I'll get back to that question, but also want to pick up again on what you said in terms of that savings pocket being used to look after their families. This whole idea of the collective economy is very much this two-way street. Not only are you getting income from your community, you're also expected to share back. And what's interesting there is how this is seen among younger people, this particular cohort, in contrast to South African millennials, as a positive, as a joyful thing. There is a joy in being part of the collective community economy. So we kind of termed it the joy of giving back, as opposed to this idea of there's like a tax that you've got to pay your family and your community. And I think that's a really positive thing to lean into. And also for brands and businesses to pay attention to, this idea of collective sharing and the collective economy, which was sort of pontificated a lot around millennials as being what millennials were into, is actually now being lived and turned into a reality with younger people right now. And that's a whole new form of collective capitalism that we can look into. In terms of like the interesting side hustles, there's a lot of the normal stuff. So we see sort of Uber driving and we see nail technicians. We also see a lot of people incorporating themselves, which is something I've been speaking about quite a lot. This whole idea of becoming an influencer, which could be dismissed as being a hobby by older generations again, but now it's a very lucrative career. Look at the young people on the Forbes 40 under 40, 30 under 30. They're influencers, right? So being a person of influence is not something to be ridiculed. It's not a joke. It is a very serious way of making income. And this is an important point because it ties back to a lot of the other insights that came out of this report.
So we're going to come back to this. So some of the wild stuff was like, I use betting apps as making an income. What about investing in crypto? We saw almost 30% of our respondents are investing in crypto. So while cash is king, and we'll get back to that later, almost 80% of students are still using cash as opposed to tapping their cards. We're still seeing that both betting apps, investing in crypto, and we saw very interesting businesses, like we've seen a young person who's creating what they're calling democratizing technology. So delivery apps in Mpumalanga, or using excess food in restaurants and creating food stamps to give poor people cheap meals. So young people are making a plan. They're using technology. They're not just idle, but what we're seeing is the personal brand, and this is what I want to come back to. The personal brand is the obvious one that they take so seriously because they're monetizing themselves.
Yeah.
And so what did you find interesting there on how they monetize?
Yeah, so this idea of monetizing yourself means you see yourself and the way you present yourself in the world as an investment. So a lot of the things you were saying there, we see these new categorization of old words. We see using your savings as a way, as an emergency fund instead of having traditional insurance. We see sports betting as a form of income and investment, not as an expense or a hobby. You see this, like this whole sort of category blur we're seeing. And when we see investing in ourselves, we start to see this investing very literally. Whereas before, if you are a 40, 50-year-old person or a 60, 70-year-old baby boomer from the older generations, investing in yourself meant investing in your education. You know, and that's what it meant, or it meant investing in a pension fund or in a life insurance policy. Now, that doesn't add up. The maths doesn't math that way anymore. If you're just doing that, you're not going to get ahead in this very unequal world that we have. You're at best going to trade water and live off your credit card like your parents are doing right now. So younger people are seeing investing in yourself in a much more literal sense. Like investing in yourself means investing in the way you show up in the world. It means dressing well. It means having the right sort of equipment to present yourself in the digital world and in the physical world to capitalize off that personal brand. And when we start to see it that way, when young people are investing very literally in themselves, not just in their education, but in their personal presence and how they're showing up in the world, that return on investment is actually often greater than the return on investments in investing in traditional financial assets. And the financial sector in South Africa needs to catch a wake up here. The thing is, you're not going to get someone under the age of 30 to invest in your life insurance policy unless that return on investment is going to be greater than that return on investment of that young person betting on themselves. I think this is very positive because what they're saying basically, what they're really saying through what they do, and that's what you've got to look at, is that I believe more in myself than I do believe in your business, in your economy, and the general stock market. And isn't that actually a wonderful thing? Unless you are trying to sell sort of life insurance or a general equity-based retirement policy, right?
Well, I think it's beautiful because not only has the system let them down, not only are there not enough jobs, they're saying, I'm making a plan irrespective.
And I'm doing okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm getting that return on investment.
Yeah. So now, if we look further, what I found fascinating was this generation are so much more transactional. And when we speak to the point of, say, loyalty or not loyalty, I think let's start with even the world of banking. So potentially when you and I were students, we were kind of a lot more loyal to a bank. Often it was a bank that our parents either signed us up to, or when we arrived at varsity, we would sign up to a bank and we would keep it generally either for life or for a very long time. What did you notice in the...
Oh, yeah. Loyalty is a very different animal these days. Loyalty is not having one bank and sticking to it. It's not having one brand and sticking to it. It's not having one retailer and sticking to it. Rather, again, it's loyalty to oneself. This is what we are ultimately seeing. The young consumer or customer or citizen is loyal to what is best for them. And that might mean having multiple bank accounts for multiple purposes that offer multiple different banking fee structures and reward structures that can all be capitalized upon. So banking is almost viewed as a form of portfolio. So just like your sports betting is seen part of your investment portfolio, your bank account's also part of your investment portfolio, because if you can get loyalty points here and you can get earn e-bucks here, that's another form of revenue, for example. Or, of course, if you're paying, you can do like fee arbitrage, depending on where you can get a maximum kind of free transactions on every different bank. It might make sense to have multiple bank accounts. But there's also that other sort of layer around this loyalty that's actually the opposite of loyalty. It's actually disloyalty. So your customers signed up to your loyalty program, but actually they signed up to your competitor's loyalty program too. And the reason they signed up to all these different bank accounts is because they actually don't trust any one bank account. Now, what's hidden in the data that you might not have seen there, but you will see if you have conversations with people, is that so many people in this country and across the world have been defrauded. They have had criminals hack into their bank accounts. They might have been hijacked and have forced to give over their PIN account. They might have been defrauded from a social media promotion. Their bank might not have stepped in to solve that problem. So hedging your bets and having your money in different places, your little dragon hoard in different caves, not all in the same cave, makes a lot of sense in this country. And there's another layer too, and that is, of course, that although we've said quite clearly that we don't have a lot of debt here, when we start getting into, as the older sort of Gen Zs that we're looking at here do have access to a bit of credit, it again makes sense to hedge your capital that's in the black opposed to your debt that's in the red across different bank accounts too, again for personal arbitrage and risk reduction, shall we say, measures.
Yeah. And so what we saw in the research was over 55% have more than 2 bank accounts.
Correct.
Which is crazy. And even two of our respondents had 8
Yes.
bank accounts. I mean, what are you going to do with 8 bank accounts? Now, the crazy thing is they're credit shy, so only 16% have credit cards. And that suggests that they've seen both their parents, older siblings, and families fall into debt traps, and they don't want to go down that road. What we're seeing is they do want things still, and so they are using other means like buy now, pay later, or they're saving up for their next big ticket item. But what I found fascinating is still cash is king. So almost 80%, once the money hits the account, ping, ping, the SMS, they will go to an ATM and they will withdraw their cash. How do you explain that?
Yeah, so cash is a really interesting one. There are both demand and supply reasons why this might be evidenced. Sure, in some places in this country, we still operate on a cash-based economy. There's certain shops that you still can't transact with digitally, so it makes sense to have cash, especially if you are operating on the margins of the grey/formal economy. There's places where you need cash in order to transact. It's quite the opposite on the other end of the economy, where increasingly retailers are preventing you from using cash and insisting that you use digital. So you have to have a demand and a supply match in order for your cash transactions to switch to credit or to debit or to digital transactions. Both the seller and the buyer have to want to transact in the same currency. And as long as there's still places that only accept cash, you're going to have some cash on your person. But there's also, of course, this issue of distrust, not wanting to leave my cash in a bank that could be scooped up by a taxman or by a creditor. Although, as we say, many of them don't have creditors. There's still this idea that the trust in the banking institution is not entirely formalized. We saw this again through all the different bank accounts. But then there's also the issue of cost, which is something that we don't necessarily understand if we are wealthier. If you're working in a bank, you probably see, the cost of digital transaction, what does that mean? But actually, no, that does add up. It does add up if every time you transact, there's a small transaction fee coming off your debit account, which, as we said, which is where most people transact with, for example. And there's a transaction cost quite often on both the buyer and the seller's side, which is marginal. If you're a fintech, of course, you know those marginal costs add up to your profits and your bank balance, right? If every time someone is swiping their card or paying on your digital app, through your payment system, you're taking a tiny couple of cents or a percent, you're getting rich on that. And the customer ultimately is paying for that either in terms of the price they pay or in terms of that actual transaction cost, whether the buyer or the seller is paying it. So cash does have a cost. It has a cost to the government who prints the money. It has a cost to the bank who doesn't want you to pay in cash. In fact, some of our banks are now increasing their cash withdrawal fees, whether you're withdrawing from a teller or whether you're withdrawing from an ATM, trying to push us into this digital economy. But at the same time, those costs add up if you're living on a fixed income or on a low income, and you can save a couple of cents or a couple of rands by getting a cash discount, by not paying those transaction fees. It makes sense to pay with cash. So there's both a trust issue here and a cost issue and a actual sort of a transactional sort of logistical issue here where cash is still so much a part of our economy.
Totally agree. I've seen a couple of years that things like PayShap and the government's also putting pressure on the banks to actually reduce the fees for lower transaction sizes. So
not just the banks, we also see the government. For example, the government has put like a deadline on Taxi SA in the Gauteng region to go digital within the next 2 years. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why banks and why the government would like us to stop using cash, because all those cash discounts could turn into tax revenues, for example, and all of those free transactions can add up as profits for the banking sector, for the fintech sector, and again, for that whole sort of digital economy chain.
And ultimately the taxman.
Yes, ultimately the taxman is very keen on ungreying our grey economy.
Yeah. So let's move on. I would like you to comment on a few things. Did you see in the report, are young people more healthier? Are they drinking less? And what are they spending most on, either online? Just one of the things that absolutely fascinated me, we've been tracking e-commerce for the last, say, 10 years. And our pre-COVID levels were 34% of young people were ordering online. Post-COVID, about 65%. And now what we saw is 100% of people receive between 1 and 3 deliveries every month. So tell me what's happening there.
Yeah, in terms of where spend is going, as you said, there's a lot happening in the digital space. That's not the bulk of transactions, though. So everyone is part of the digital e-commerce economy now. So absolutely, if you are a brand or a business, your digital channels are game on. Everyone is now your customer. But at the same time, that's not necessarily where most of the money is going at the moment. Remember, again, this is a cost and price sensitive customer. And those delivery fees, again, they're adding up, right? So again, if you are a brand or business hearing this, maybe maybe you should think twice about that sort of, oh, you have to meet a minimum basket spend in order to get that delivery. Do you want the sale, or do you want the sale to go to the offline store instead, right? So think about those delivery fees. This is a price-sensitive demographic, but if they can only get it online, by all means, that's going to happen. What was quite interesting here, coming back to sort of like the health questions, remember, I'm investing in myself first. So yes, the food that I eat, the products I consume are also seen as being part of an investment in myself, in my health, again, in the way I show up in the world. We also see food being used as a kind of status product. And you can see this as you track spend through the month, where you see more luxury grocery purchases take place at the beginning of the month, where there's cash in the bank accounts, and as the month carries on, we get to those leaner mid-month days, we see people trading down into less brand name food products. So by status symbol food, we're not just talking about takeouts and restaurants, we're also talking about the sort of perceived luxury value of actual retailers and grocery stores, right? So that's also seen part of
social spend.
Yes. So the food you buy, the bag you're walking around with, the kind of branding on the drinks that you're buying, the sandwiches that you're buying are part of your social status and your social status conversation. So the products you consume are very much part of that, but also has the health aspect there too. So seeing investing in health products is almost just seen as a form of investment again, like being able to afford good quality food. Healthy food is again an investment in yourself. So that's really interesting. And again, the real interesting things is how much young people are spending on things like clothes in comparison to how much they're spending on rent. When those two numbers basically line up on the little bar charts, you see something there. And that could be interpreted as, again, frivolous spend, but not if you have this mindset shift of the way I show up in the world, the way I look, the way I'm presented, the way I show up online, the way I show up offline, has a tangible impact on my bank statement, because being seen as a person of influence, a person of credibility, translates into actual, not just social capital, but social capital now becomes fungible with actual capital and opportunities. Suddenly investing in the way you look is now very explicitly an investment and not an expense.
Got it. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up with just a few ideas what companies can do. So, quick question: are malls dead?
No, malls are not dead at all. I don't know if you've been to a mall lately, especially at the end of the month. Malls are booming. You're now having as many people in the middle of July as you would have seen in December at a shopping center. There's many reasons for this. South Africa is different to other parts of the world. Malls are dying in other parts of the world, but here, malls are a place where you can socialize safely in a very unsafe society. It's also a place where you can see and be seen. Right? It's also a place that can be part of your connection, part of meeting new people, being seen in spaces, and of course, being part of that whole economy. So malls are a place of meeting, but it's shifted. It used to be malls were like a place where 12-year-olds would get together to meet. Now it's a place where 20 and 30-year-olds are getting together to meet on the weekends, right?
Yeah. So how can retailers capitalize on this? What should they be doing to their stores to attract people that are coming there to socialize? Yeah,
exactly. That is the challenge. People are going to malls. They're not necessarily going into shops. This is, of course, the distinction that we start to see, right? So, of course, again, price sensitivity is something to look at. Like, are you offering actual value to this customer? And are you offering them something that they can't get somewhere else or get online too? Because you're competing with people who might actually be purchasing online while they're sitting right in front of your store having a snack, right? But how do you get that spend into your door instead of that mass that's sitting outside of the shops but in the mall space and ecosystem is something to consider. But again, you have to consider the price sensitivity. So people going to malls, because there's not an admissions charge to be there, right? You can socialize in a nice space. Many of our malls have nice places for people to sit and to be. So the quick answer would be, just charge people to come into the space. But that's not going to be the way to do it. Rather, there has to be a value exchange here. Like, what am I going to get in terms of value?
Well, perhaps that's where campaigns can come to life, because that's where you can bring your influencers, and that's where you can have experiences in store, and you can really bring things to life.
Yeah, bring the experience from the mall into your individual space. But again, like not necessarily by charging that admission fee, that sense of being part of the community economy. Can you bring that community into what might be perceived as being your space or an exclusive space? How do you make your space feel less exclusive and more inclusive, while still, of course, highlighting the status of being within that space?
Exactly.
A thin line to balance them.
Exactly. Bron, thank you so much. We're not going anywhere yet. I just want to check, are there any questions from the audience?
Thank you, Ro. We do actually have a couple of questions from the audience, which I will be going through now. First, we got a question from Muzi that is aligned to the point of loyalty to oneself. Were there any insights as to what may trigger the decision to switch from one brand to another?
So I'll have a first stab at it, and maybe you can follow. This generation is so transactional. I've actually never seen it like this. So they are not loyal by design, it's by pure convenience. So if a deal suits me, and it's what I want, and it's something I can afford, I'll go for it. And I'll keep on doing it while it's convenient. If something else pops up that's of interest, then I'll go for that. And so that's how they seem to accumulate sneakers, clothes, bank accounts, data contracts, all of those kind of things. Everything is about flexibility and really being transactional. It's almost like the consumer side of Tinder.
Yeah, exactly. So if there's like one piece of advice for brands and businesses is don't chase loyalty because you're chasing the wrong thing. You're chasing something that doesn't exist. Rather chase delivering value. If your offer is inarguably more delivering more value, and that value can be tangible or intangible. Remember, the intangible value is now convertible for tangible value. That if there's one point you kind of get from this conversation, that's what's shifted in our world now. If you're offering intangible value that translates into real value in that person's life, or the way that person shows up in the world or is perceived in the world, you're offering a better value proposition. So chase offering value. Your customer is now a transactional customer. They're not a loyalty-based customer. Don't chase that imaginary ideal of loyalty.
Yes. So loyalty may be an unintended consequence of providing value and service.
Yeah, the value and service thing is really important. That also came through quite strongly in this report, in that when we start asking people what do they actually want from businesses, it's really simple. They want good service and good value for their money. And it's surprising how few brands seem to be actually delivering that. What the customer wants is respect. Respect for their time, respect for their attention, and respect for their very valuable cash.
Yeah. And don't be my friend.
Yeah, we're not interested. That was another really interesting point. Not interested in brands being loyal to brands, and not interested in brands being your friend. A brand is not a personal relationship. A brand is a transactional exchange of value. So this idea of like having a friend type social media account is just not landing with this audience at all.
Yeah, they'd much rather deal with your bot.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions before we carry on to the panel?
Yes, I do have one more row. From Senzi, speaking of clothes, and I guess also to the point of value, has the status of the Sheins of the world become a preferred option among our Gen Zs?
So we call it Sheen. So it's, I live amongst Gen Zs, both at work and at home, and there are many Sheen orders coming through. Between Sheens and the Temus of the world, I think a few years ago, local was really preferred, and now there's just, it's almost like it's borderless. It's, again, back down to the value.
It's
the
a value
service,
and price thing.
And they've kind of put that thing around, is it good for the environment or not? It's kind of the convenience thing is trumped it.
But again, let's come back to that point around there, because there's kind of a nuance there. When we talk about how we show up in the world, it's around how we perceived what our style is, what our personal style and brand proposition is. And it's not the brand of the label that you're wearing on your clothes anymore. This is a big shift between millennial and Gen Zs. In South Africa in particular, millennials were very brand conscious. This is not a brand conscious generation aside from their own personal brand. And what's very interesting, this is global and not just local, is that Generation Z will brag about finding a dupe at a discount. They're not embarrassed about it. It's actually, again, coming back to this idea of transactional. I've been able to steal some of your brand value by buying your brand effectively, or your brand status at a discount. So brands,
badge of honor.
yes, it's a badge of honor. If you can find a high quality dupe, you're not going to be embarrassed about being caught wearing a dupe. Rather, you're going to be a status symbol within your peer group for finding something that offers better value. We've seen this with the TikTok trends, with the Chinese factory operators showing you exactly where that Hermes bag is made and how you can get it directly from them from cheaper. This is a generation that's going to take up that offer. They are very cynical about brands and about brand power, and we can see this globally when how luxury brands are struggling at the moment. They're struggling to persuade Gen Z that it's worth paying 10 times the price for something that was made in the same factory. So brands need to be very aware of this. It's a case of value, but not to say that we're dressing in cheap clothes. Rather, the how you put it together, your style, is where the value comes from.
Savvy and cynical, and as long as it serves my personal
And the brand is me. The brand is not the label.
Exactly. So we're going to take a pause here. I think it's been a fascinating first session. Over to you, Lebs.
Before we do, Ro, may I please sneak in one more cheeky question that we have from Alison, and that's, do you have any research regarding Gen Z's attitude towards alcohol? What's important to them when choosing an alcohol brand? Just had to throw that one in there. It seemed important.
Okay, no problem, Lebs. We're open here. So what we're seeing is there's a global trend when it comes to alcohol, is that this generation is actually drinking less, and they're looking towards the more kind of light versions. And what we see is quite fascinating, and it doesn't necessarily show up in the paper, but more in observational studies that we do, is that what they do at home and what they do when they go out are completely different stories. So at home, they're kind of drinking more on the cheap and more on the value side where no one's watching. When they go out and they need their personal brand to show up, or they're looking to attract an other, they're really looking to show up. And so here they will spend outrageous amounts, especially on payday weekends. You're seeing like 4 figures dropping on one night, popping bottles, going for premium brands. And we're even seeing, and similar to the duping side, is that we're seeing students or young Gen Zs that are prepared to rent bottles just to look good, just in case, just for the pictures, just for the gram, and then go home. I don't know if you want to add to that.
I will add to that South African Gen Zs are still drinking alcohol. Globally, that is not the case. Globally, Gen Zs are trading away from alcohol towards new generation narcotics, whether they be CBD-infused drinks, or they be mushrooms, or they be vapes instead of cigarettes. But locally in South Africa, we do still have an alcohol drinking culture. Brands might miss this point if they're looking only at Cape Town and Sea Point, and they see wealthy, largely Western Gen Zs who are tiny minority in our population here, doing exactly that, aping what's happening in other parts of the world, switching their vices to the more Western ideal. But across our country, like most of the global South, we are still an alcohol drinking population.
Yeah. So we drink our way through our problems, and generally through the month, we cheap behind doors, and when we show up big. But what we are seeing is, as the Gen Zs are growing older, is that they're actually choosing more healthier lifestyles in amongst all of that. So with your permission, Lebs, are we able to carry on?
Thank you, Ro. We're drinking away our sorrows, and we're doing it for the gram. Ro and Bronwyn, I think we can all agree that this report doesn't just challenge assumptions, it demands action. And speaking of real voices that will create action, let's hear directly from the generation we're here to better understand. We've invited 3 dynamic Gen Z voices to share how they navigate money, identity, and expectations in today's economy. No filters, no fluff, just their lived experience. Please take it away, Tubbs.
Thank you, Lebs. And I must say thank you to Ronen and Ro. I think some great insights coming from that. But sometimes the best way to understand this market is actually have a conversation. So we've invited three beautiful Gen Zs to come join us. And we really, for the next few minutes, are going to take a dive into their world in terms of where do they get their income, what is their lifestyle like, and most importantly, where they're supposed to spend most of the time. But before we dive into that, we've been seeing a lot of activity on the chat. So please, this is an interactive session. So if you do have questions, please drop it in the chat box. And then at the end, we have a nice Q&A section where we'll answer some of those questions. But as we start, I'm going to have the Gen Zs introduce themselves. So please just tell me your name, surname, what are you studying, and one fact that your parents don't know about you. So I'm going to start off this side.
My name is Balentle Shoisa, and I'm studying marketing management at the University of Johannesburg. And one fact that my parents don't know about me is that I go out to clubs.
Hi everybody, my name is Sekho Fatolanga. I'm an LB student at Wits University, and one thing my parents don't know about me is that I blow money. Damn.
Hi everyone, my name is Safia Mpaga. I'm a recent graduate from the IIE's Varsity College. I studied marketing management, and the one thing I would say my parents don't know about me is that I'm actually quite popular. My parents don't think I am. They think I'm very indoorsy and stuff. I'm quite a people's person. I'm outspoken. I'm out there. Yeah.
Jeez, I'm amazed to be graced by your presence as a celebrity. Langa, you spoke about blowing money. In Bali, you spoke about going to the club. Mm-hmm. One thing these things have in common is money. Life nowadays is expensive. Everything that we do involves money. Mm-hmm. I mean, even dating nowadays involves money. You need to cover funerals, chubby cheeks, So, but what's really important I need to ask is that where do you guys get your money from? What are your sources of income that you get your money from?
Would you like to start or?
Sure, I can start. I'm actually self-employed. I'm a lash artist by profession, currently upskilling myself even more to become an esthetician. So yeah, that is where my income comes from. Other than that, I would say my dad. Yeah.
Real.
All right. For me, most of my money comes from brand campaigns, events. I'm an events manager, coordinator, and and just hustling on the streets and just making ends meet. Yeah.
Okay, so one of my side hustles, I help small businesses market them or promote themselves on social media, and then the other one is I do promo gigs. For example, with Student Village, when they have on-campus activations, I'm part of their team. So yeah.
So what I'm getting at is that side hustles are important. Yes. I think what I wanted to ask maybe, how many side hustles do you each have? I know you guys mentioned a few, but besides being your main source of income, I know some of you are studying and probably your parents' income, but what other income supplement that in terms of side hustles?
Well, like she mentioned, promo gigs are quite a big one. And I myself do dabble in marketing for events that need social media marketing and stuff. I do use my platforms to assist them in getting the word out there. And yeah, I guess jobs like this as well, sitting on panels, would be a side hustle.
That's dope. That's dope. I think let's get into that because just a small caveat. For you to have a side hustle, you need to get paid, right? So when it comes to banking, right, there's a whole host of opportunities and options to pick. How many bank accounts, number one, do you guys have? But number two, how do you select your bank account?
Well, I only have two. I bank with two banks. One is with FNB, and then ABSA. I have the student credit card. I just wanted to build my credit score with the student credit card.
That's good. That's good.
So with me, I've got three bank accounts. I've got Standard Bank, I've got FNB, and I've got ABSA. So one is for the business, one is for my day-to-day transactions, and then the last one is just money for blowing. So yeah, just for blowing.
I myself have 4 bank accounts, actually. 1 for business, 2 for personal, and the last one would be insurance-based, the Discovery Bank. I just get better perks and benefits when transacting via that bank account. Yeah.
So here's a quick scenario, right? I'm going to put all the banks we have here in South Africa in front of you, right? What are the 2 key things that make you decide to go, let's say, with 2 banks? So you have all the banks in front of you. What 2 key decision makers makes you decide to go with 2 particular banks?
I think for me, number one is convenience, because I'm sure everyone knows that Capitec lines are so long because because like the banks are so limited. So I think the first thing for me is convenience, and the second one is the bank charges. Yeah, I think that's like those are the most two important key factors for me when choosing a bank.
So a bank charge is still a thing nowadays.
Definitely.
Indeed, they are.
100%. Would you guys then say maybe rewards under banking is important? Do you guys have to have rewards?
I would say yes, I would want rewards, but for me, one thing that I look for in a bank account is how it can grow my money, like the investment terms. So that's the one thing that I go for. I'm not really big on rewards. Unlike the F&B, I guess the e-bucks, that helps, but it's not something that I'm looking for actively. Yeah.
You mentioned Capitec, right? I used to bank with Capitec, right? But I think it was because of the lines. But Capitec introduced easy equities.
Okay.
So because of Capitec, I started investing in stocks.
Okay.
Because they introduced easy equities. So I think if it wasn't for Capitec, I wouldn't have been investing in stocks.
So you're looking out for your future and investments and stuff like that. Okay, cool. So at the end of each month, you get that SMS, you get the notification, boom, boom, money is in. All right, it's in your account now. Now you're up. You're feeling charged up. What's the first thing that's on your mind to spend when you get that money?
Cosmetics.
Cosmetics. Okay. Maybe what would it be cosmetics-wise?
Skincare products. Cosmetics number one for me.
Langa?
I think for me, you always need to reward yourself once that notification comes in. So, I mean, getting a drink or few, like with your friends, and then you can start getting things like your necessities, like your toiletries, your food, your transport money, or etc., etc. So you need to reward yourself first. So yeah.
Big on the rewarding yourself, but for me, it's my maintenance. So my maintenance would be like my hair, my nails, skincare, cosmetics, like she said, just getting those out of the way first. Yeah.
So you guys don't eat? Like, none of you guys are mentioning groceries, nothing.
But like,
It's not a priority. It's not a priority. Okay. So right now, if I had to go to your fridge and open up your fridge right now,
What's the date?
that's a great question. Let's say it's the beginning of the month, right? You charged up, just got your rack, you've blown your money on Hennessy, you've done your cosmetics, XYZ. Now it's real. Now you need to open your fridge. How does your fridge look like at the beginning of the month in comparison to the end of the month?
Honestly, I buy the basics because I found when I buy groceries in bulk, they go to waste. And I find myself ordering on Uber Eats a lot. So I buy basic stuff like your cereals, things that can stay long term in the fridge. So I would say my fridge is not packed. You're not going to be able to cook a whole meal with the items in my fridge, no.
Okay.
And then with me, I think like the basics as well, like your meat, your, veggies, your fruits, just to get by, because I'm always on the road trying to figure out how I can make money. So I don't think eating is a necessity, but we need to make sure that, we satisfy our body in other ways. So, yeah.
Langa, you're killing me. So I'm not sure if you guys know, one of Langa's nicknames is Dash, right? Because cool drink, he doesn't see it as cool drink, he sees it as a form to dash, right? So it's like a small caveat. When it comes to alcohol, right? What alcohol do you guys normally drink, and how do you determine which alcohol to drink?
I think brutal fruit, ciders,
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not really experimental when it comes to like alcohol, but ciders.
With me, I think, I have a long story, but I'm just going to cut it short. So I used to drink Hennessy, but then since there's been allegations of fake alcohol and stuff, and primarily, like Hennessy is the most fake because the hangover takes like about a week. But right now I'm drinking Jameson, Martell, and your Corona. So
Martell, you said Martell.
Martell. So yeah, and it's cheaper than Hennessy, and yeah, it actually tastes nice. So those are the three things that I drink.
Okay. I've got different groups of friends and their taste varies. So we always, as girls, we always go for like ciders, your sparkling wines or just wine. But if we're out, tequila because it gets the job done quicker and you don't have to drink as much. Yeah. Yeah.
So what's most important is that where do you guys get your drinks from? I think nowadays we live in a world where we don't want to be walking to the shops, right? So where do you order your drinks from, or where do you order your groceries from? Is it down the road, online? How do you get your stuff to you?
Zulzi.
Okay.
Yeah, online, it's efficient, quick. Checker 6060 is also really good. But if I just long for some human interaction, I will walk into a Tops. Yeah.
At Tops.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
great.
think for me, if I'm at home, if I'm not doing anything for the weekend, I just order through Checker 6060 because they also have like proper discounts there. So especially for alcohol and food. So I think those are the main two things that I usually buy through Checker 6060, but mostly alcohol.
Okay. Hey, anything alcohol? You also alcohol?
No. Checker 66.
Checker 66.
Definitely.
But you mentioned something, discounts, right? So with discounts comes savings. You're saving your money, right? A huge culture in our nowadays is what you're wearing. So what kicks do you guys wear? Currently right now, what shoes are you wearing? What brand is it?
Okay.
I'm wearing Nikes. I'm not really big on kicks. I really like sandals, open shoes and stuff.
Okay.
But even when I do buy those, I'm shopping at Aldo, Steve Madden, Zara. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I'm an Adidas lover, so I have more Adidas sneakers, and I'm currently wearing Adidas Oswegos. I think I bought them for like $2,000, just a mere $2,000. So
A Mia.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
just a
okay.
mere $2,000.
All right. We've got a Hoodman with us today. And you, Mbali?
I'm currently wearing Steve Madden. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
that was like my first big purchase when I got my money from my side hustles.
Okay.
So-
Cool purchase.
So I'm seeing that money's not a problem at this table. Hey, Steve Madden.
No, you don't have to
You
say
know.
that. Like we
It's all about budgeting.
budgeting.
Okay.
And like you said, you reward yourself.
Yeah.
So you'll like do like a 75 hard,
Yes.
no Uber Eats, no makeup, no skincare.
I
And then
deserve
afterwards
this.
you're like, okay, I'm going to buy a handbag.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go through the rough, you know,
Yes.
you have it out, and then you reward yourself at that end.
Sure.
Precisely.
Cool. But we mentioned a lot of things like Steve Madden, Nike. Those are all brands, right? What's the one brand you cannot at all live out without?
Live without. That's tough because like
I'm
he's
going to
different.
say Apple products.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's dive into that.
Yeah, because once you get an iPhone, you know, you get the Apple Watch. And after you get the Apple Watch, you want an iPad. And then your HP laptop, it doesn't. So you need the MacBook.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say my
100%.
Apple products. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I concur with what she said. You know, like I feel like a lot of people, including you, Tabs,
Hey.
I'm sure you have.
Hey, I don't know how I came into this.
You have the whole. I'm sure you have the whole catalog. You've got a MacBook, Apple Watch, iPhone, AirPods. So I think Apple is the most. What's the word? Like it's the most loyal brand that I can think of right now.
Okay.
Most loyal. Yeah.
So if there's one brand you have to choose, it'll be Apple.
Yeah, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But with any purchases, one thing you want to do is that you want to post on that. You want to show people, you want to flex. Hey, I just got a
course.
new MacBook, right?
Of course.
What's the first social media platform you go to post your new purchases?
Instagram.
TikTok,
IG, TikTok.
TikTok.
Okay.
WhatsApp as well, actually. I really enjoy the new status feature on WhatsApp. Yeah. I like that.
So do you like now the new integration on WhatsApp? You can put music, you can tag your friends on statuses, you can reshare. Do you like that?
That is a bit much, but I did just enjoy posting statuses,
Okay.
like actually just posting pictures. The tagging friends and the adding of music, I haven't caught up to that yet, but posting a status, I would say, yeah.
No, I like that. The new feature, love it.
That's dope. That's dope. So I think as we're speaking about brands, what's the one thing you think brands are getting right?
Some brands are noticing that we're active consumers, like we're not passive consumers. So we care about the causes in the world, you know, climate change, gender equality. So don't, like, I don't know what's the word. Like, you know, some brands are just performative. You know, they don't actually support the cause meaningfully. So, yeah, they're noticing that we're active consumers.
I think for me, since I'm into events and etc., I think what brands are getting right is them partnering with influencers, because influencers have a lot of reach, especially on TikTok, for example. TikTok, I think it's quickly outgrowing like your Instagram, your other social media platforms. So partnering with influencers, because people, like including myself, we relate much to influencers. So I think that's one thing that they're doing correct for me.
So I'm gonna have to come in there. So collaboration is a huge thing, but I wish I had more time with you. But let's go back to Lebo and see if there are any questions that dropped in the chat, and let's see if we can ask any questions.
So from big budgets to abused livers and empty fridges, I think that was exactly the kind of honest, bold conversations that we needed to have. We do have a couple of questions that I'm going to run through quickly, just quick fire shooting through them. Let's keep it a little bit short with the answers. First, from Jamie, what are your feelings around X or Twitter as a platform, and is Facebook still a thing?
Are you guys still active on Facebook nowadays?
No.
I've never had a Facebook account. I recently did open one for my business, and I don't know what is happening on there. So no, Facebook I don't think is a thing amongst Gen Zs, unless we're stalking someone.
Okay.
No.
So then, what would you say you use Facebook for, and what do you use Twitter for?
Twitter's for news, and then Facebook is just for like marketplace and all those things. But the older generation, not us. I think we use like Instagram, TikTok. So those are our go-to.
So would you say it's still relevant nowadays?
Not to Gen Zs.
Not to Gen Zs, but it is still kind of relevant.
Okay.
And it
cool.
is helpful. I would
It
say.
really is for your business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's dope. That's dope. Side hustle. Twitter.
Yes.
Lebo,
Yes.
any other questions?
Yes, I do. So from Boat, do you guys have any debt? And what do you think about debt? If you do have it, how do you handle it?
Let's get into that. I know debt is a huge word in our world.
I'm not necessarily in debt. Someone convinced me to open a clothing account to build my credit score, and TFG is chowing my money. Like, it was supposed to be a 12 months credit thing. It's been over 12 months, and I'm still paying for that account. I don't think it decreases even.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not in debt per se, but I don't like that hold that it has on me. Yeah.
They tried it on me. I'm like, no,
I ain't about it.
I ain't about that life.
So what's your general feeling around debt? Do you try to stay away from it, or do you welcome it?
I stay away from it, honestly.
I think there's good debt and there's bad debt, especially if you're trying to evolve yourself as you're like, growing. But if you can avoid it, I would say try to. Yeah.
100%.
By all means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I like-
Especially clothing accounts.
Yeah.
That's a
100%.
scam.
It is.
Clothing accounts is a scam because my dad is still paying for it. Clothing accounts.
It is a scam.
And he opened it like a long time ago. So I'm like, I'm not going to do that to myself.
That's
I'd
good.
rather build my credit score differently.
So mixed feelings. There's good debt, there's bad debt, and there's
Yeah.
also just stay
Yeah.
away from it.
Yeah.
Any more questions, Liv?
Let's go with one more. So with the bank accounts that we're using for businesses, are they actual business banking accounts or personal accounts that we're using for business purposes?
That's a great question, and you have quite a few side hustles. So do you have a business which is registered and use an account?
I do have a registered business account, but I
Okay.
was actually trading from my personal account, which I found so much more better than using the business account, because now I feel like SARS is entitled to my money. And
Ma'am, you're going to get arrested.
but nonetheless, there are good perks that come with having a business account.
Yeah.
So if you can open one, I would recommend. Also, the sense of professionalism when trading from business to customer, it's a lot better that way.
I need to get on that.
I
You
think
do.
I also have a business account. It's under FNB, and she mentioned the benefits. So in terms of credit and borrowing money, and like it's more of like flexible with like and more professional. So I think I prefer like a business account more than using your personal account for business transactions. Yeah.
So with your side hustles, you want a dedicated business account that you want to use. 120%. Libs, anything else?
One more before we leave. I mean, we're not going to have this moment again. You're going to party hard, hurt the livers. So one last question. In terms of skincare and makeup, what brands are you purchasing currently at the moment?
So unfortunately, Langa, you have to stay away from this question.
I mean, we don't know. Maybe Laga's into skincare and abused livers.
Mbali, you spoke about cosmetics earlier on. Do you want to take this?
Standard Beauty
Okay.
and The Fundamentals. Those are the two local brands, South African brands,
Okay.
that I'm currently using right now. So
Okay.
yeah, with makeup brands, it's definitely Maybelline.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes to skincare, is price a factor for you when you decide? Or is
Definitely.
it more quality of
It's
skincare?
both, kind of both.
Okay.
But then it's mostly with pricing because, again, I'm a student.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's still something that's very important. in your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Okay. And would you say also it's the same? Also price, quality? How do you determine it?
With skincare, I would say quality over the pricing because I've bought cheap skincare and it affected me badly. But the expensive skincare is also not that good. But in terms of makeup, your drugstore makeup, so whatever you get at Dischem is pretty good, I would say. I wouldn't walk into a MAC store. No, I could just go to Dischem and I'll be fine.
But skincare is still something that's very important
Yes,
to you.
yes. I don't compromise on that. Yeah.
So whether you have money or no money, skincare is there.
I try to just be very mindful about the way I use my skincare.
Okay.
Yes.
100%. So, Libs, you can definitely see the importance of skincare. And I wish we had more time, but thank you so much to the three beautiful Gen Zs. This was really just a deep dive into their world, walking hand in hand. But I'm going to throw it back to Libs and let's continue the brilliant show.
Thanks, Tabs. Skincare for the girlies and expensive alcohol for the boys. Massive thanks to Tubbs and our awesome Gen Zs for bringing us straight into the heart of the Gen Z experience. That's the kind of honesty brands really need to hear more often. Moving right along, we're going to bring back Ro for our key takeaways. We're going to be hearing directly from him what Gen Z, what brings the report from the Gen Zs to life, what data we have, and what their voices give us. So, time to bring everything together. And as I said, Ro's going to help us connect the dots and translate what we've heard into clear strategic action. Back to you, Ro.
Thanks, Lebs. I thought before we close up, there could be a few questions, and this could be a good time to take some questions before we wrap up.
We've actually been blowing up. We've actually been blowing up on the socials. Good call, Ro. I do have quite a few. Please bear with me. So, to add to Alison's question from earlier, do you have any research regarding Gen Z's attitudes towards drinking and driving?
So, from what I've seen and what's been reported is that it's actually improved. If you actually think what things were 10 years ago and 20 years ago, people were doing mad things on the road. And what we're seeing is twofold. One is less Gen Zs own cars. And two, they're a lot more responsible when they go out and they're using Uber, Bolt, etc. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Basically, Uber and Bolt and the e-hailing industry has changed South Africa's culture when it comes to alcohol and the roads and driving and the need to own a car. We are a car-based society, but now you've got options.
Yeah. And it all comes down to the safety of the ride.
Moving right along, have there been any insights into Gen Z's approach to mental health?
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite subjects. And really what we're seeing is that Gen Z is the generation that has outed mental health. They've made it okay to talk about it. It is essential to their makeup. And quite frankly, we see it even in the workplace that, if they feel like their mental health is challenged, they'll just opt out. They'd much rather be on the couch doing nothing than have their mental health be compromised or challenged. So we're seeing mental health in every aspect. They're free to talk about it, free to, it's pervasive in their world. Sometimes they go a bit far. I've seen with younger Gen Zs where they're using the internet almost as a psychiatrist and they are labeling themselves as they've got all these disorders where actually you can grow out of all of that. And what's beautiful is, on the other hand, is if you take like TikTok or some of their famous influencers that they follow, is that they're really taking matters into their own hands and they're really living a lot more healthy sustainable life, both physically and mentally. Do you have anything to add there, Bron?
Yeah, our previous report that we put out last year around about the same time, it was a smaller sample size, but it was a bit of a deeper research study. We found with that group that almost everyone we spoke to was involved in counseling or therapy in one way or another. So and they're happy to talk about it too. So the destigmatization is an important point here, but also, as Rose says, that respect for the whole person in the workplace. But also coming back to the workplace, the next evolution of that is beyond just mental wellness towards more holistic spiritual wellness. So a lot of the work we're doing at the moment is about that integration of meaning, purpose, and spirituality into careers, career planning, education. I think the University of Cape Town now has like a spiritual kind of incorporation into their orientation week, for example. And we're starting to see things like some gourmets now coming to coach corporates, much the same way you had your big insurance companies coming to coach corporate employees around physical health in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Now this idea of actually having spiritual as well as just mental wellness at work is almost becoming normalized, and it's probably about ripe and right time for our country, our society at this point in time.
So absolutely, and you've got Gen Z to thank there. And the other thing that we're seeing is that they're quite comfortable talking to bots, so look out for bot therapists. And quite frankly, ChatGPT has become the biggest therapist in the world.
And that comes right back, I think, Ro and Bronwyn, to loyalty to self. Like you said, Ro, people would rather put their mental health over money, over opportunities. If it brings too much mental anguish, they'd rather not do it. So that sums that point up perfectly, I think. Our next question, how do our Gen Zs make money online?
Sure. So in various ways, and we did mention it earlier. So crypto,
trading,
so 30%.
Easy equities.
Yeah, over 30% are investing in cryptos, forex trading, buying in equities. We're seeing that they're buying and selling stuff. They're even creating their own value chains, so they're becoming mini versions of Shein or Temu. They're brand influencers. We're seeing lots of businesses being formed. So if you think about it, if this is a generation that are tech natives, so they haven't lived in a world without tech. It comes so naturally to them. So if they have a passion or an idea or something that they want to solve, and they're really fluent in some aspect of technology and they can market themselves, got a business.
Yeah, basically all businesses are now online businesses, so anything can be sold or promoted online too. But those things like your sports betting, your cryptocurrencies, your forex, your trading, these are important side hustles that almost everyone's involved with, along with, of course, your regular business that you'd be promoting online. And quite often that regular business has some degree of trading your influence or your social capital in exchange for customers, for promotion, for promoting your business, or directly for promoting brands. And I think we heard that with the previous panel too. But that's all these things really tie together, in that all these abstract things, whether it's investment, whether it's sports betting, whether it is influence, are showing that essentially your portfolio is made up of your sort of social credit, right? This is all part of your online portfolio that you can trade in different ways.
Dominique has asked, does Gen Z care more about convenience versus what's in it for them and the environment and sustainability? Expanding on this, is it a myth that this generation cares more about the planet than previous generations?
I'd look at it the other way around.
Yeah, I can have a few things to say there. Again, from our previous research, we went into this in quite great detail. There's two ways to answer this. It's a nuanced question, but you have to understand both. Firstly, this is not a generation that's going to pay a premium or trade to your brand just because you are doing the right thing. Not at all. When it comes to the actual purchase decision, the purchase decision, whether they're buying your product or your service, is based on the convenience and the cost and the value to that customer. This generation is not prepared to pay for your virtue. But there's a nuance here. That generation still expects you to have values and to uphold those values, and they're quite happy to punish you, even if they're not your customer, by talking about your brand negatively online or by negatively disinfluencing your product to their audience if you are not living up to their morality and their standards. But this is perhaps the most important thing to understand about Generation Z, and particularly in the African and South African context. This is not a generation that's prepared to pay for other people's sins.
Well said. I can't add to that.
Speaking of the South African and African context, what are your thoughts on other digital platforms like virtual worlds, Roblox, Twitch, etc. when it comes to this market?
Here we are really looking, this is more of a Generation Alpha rather than Generation Z question. We heard with the previous panel, they still mainly living on Instagram in the meta universe and WhatsApp, slowly trading to TikTok and YouTube, whereas Generation Alpha is very much the generation of Roblox, of Minecraft, and of YouTube too. The immersive world builders, this is Generation Alpha. Generation Z is the trader generation.
Absolutely, but brands need to start operating in these spaces.
Yeah.
And that's all for me. I'm going to hand it over to you, Ro, for our final thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Lebs. So to end things off, as you can hear, it's really a mixed bag. There is every single Gen Z has their own way of experiencing the world. Every Gen Z has their different, not only their lived experience, but their own set of criteria to make their own decisions. So I thought what would be really useful is just to give some guiding principles on how to approach all of this. So we've sent you the report. For those that haven't received it yet, you will receive it after the webinar. And when reading it, just think of these guiding principles. So if one voice doesn't speak for 27 million people, think of it as these one-size-fits-all blanket marketing strategies just won't cut it. This generation is made up of micro communities, diverse in background, age, income, and identities. And as you heard, when we were talking about wallets between myself and Bron, and even with the panel, is at times it might sound like they're thin, but they really want to buy stuff. They're saving up to buy stuff. And individually, they may be cash-strapped, but their true power is in their collective. This generation will drive trends, shift markets, and supports what supports them. And on trust. Trust is everything. As a brand, you want to be in the circle of trust. And what this study uncovered was that between friends, family, and micro-influencers, they count for over 63% of the consideration or the sway when it comes to Gen Z purchases. Celeb influencers, just over 30%. The next thing is around loyalty. Now, loyalty is a big thing. Every brand wants their customers to be loyal. So 99% of those that we surveyed were part of loyalty programs. But make no mistake, this is not by design. This is purely transactional. Value wins every time. And when you're designing your products, when you're thinking about contracts, when you're thinking about lock-ins, when you're thinking about how to kind of keep them in, it's a bit counterintuitive when I tell you that they're more likely to stick around if they know they can leave at any time. And then on to something a bit more controversial is around social media and where do brands belong in social media? So if you had to ask a Gen Z, they would prefer that you wouldn't be there. Just like if you had a Spotify or YouTube account, you don't want adverts there, and you don't want brands. But the thing is, it does work. The trick is you've got to be on the right platform. And if you understand that if you're not there, you don't exist. But if you are there, you've only got milliseconds to make an impression. So you've got to make your impression, you've got to make it quickly, and don't try too hard, because seriously, it's a put-off. So if we've got that in mind, I think it's time to close. And I think we can all agree that the opportunity with Gen Z is massive. But only if you're willing to be flexible, if you're willing to be authentic, and actually useful. So it's this simple. If you're not offering real value on their terms, someone else will. So I know you've heard a lot today. It's been great. It's been, I think, one of our best webinars. I just want to thank the team. I want to thank everyone for joining in today, and for those that are watching the recording. This really lived up to be power-packed, insight-rich, and will hopefully help build your brand and make your sales tick. Obviously, if this was overwhelming, we will have some mental health support. I'm just kidding. If it is overwhelming and you need help on your strategies, you know where to find us. Just reach out to Student Village. I just wanted to thank my co-host, Bronwyn Williams. You've been fantastic and in authoring the report. So thank you very much. And to the Student Village team, thanks so much.
And the takeaway is the right partner, the right product in the right place equals good sales for you. With that, it brings us to the end of today's session. On behalf of Student Village and Flux Trades, thank you for being a part of the conversation. Want access to the full Gen Z economy report? It's already in your inbox. If you haven't received it or would like to explore how we could work together, click on the QR code coming up or email jono@studentvillage.co.za. Let's stop guessing and start listening and build with Gen Z, not just for them. See you all soon.